Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ask the Answers podcast with myself, Adele Cobain, your host today. And joining me live on our podcast is one of our psychics on Ask the Answers phone lines. We've got the lovely Egret joining us today. Hello there.
Hello, so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, so lovely to have you on board today. And from another part of the world, I believe. Are you in Florida? Is that right?
Yes, sunny Florida. Yeah, we have
Ah.
some beautiful wildlife, a little bit scary, but yes, we're here. We're alive
And
and well.
are you born and bred there?
No, I am actually initially I started in Seattle and I grew up in New York and then I migrated here. So, yeah,
Ah.
it's been a travel, but always the US.
Okay, perfect. Lovely. Well, it's so nice that a show like this can now reach psychics from all around the world and bring them to one place, making it nice and easy and accessible to people from all around the world to get in touch with you. It's brilliant. Modern
Yeah,
technology.
Yeah, and if I could just add, it's so interesting how the more you travel and the more you talk to people over, different time zones and different countries, we really are all the same. It's
Yeah.
so interesting. We really are connected and we really belong together and we're supposed to give to each other. So it's fascinating what you're doing because you're really kind of highlighting that idea without, really megaphoning the whole idea. And I think people feel that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, good. Absolutely. So, what brought you to Ask the Answer? Obviously, I believe you've been doing this work for quite a while now. So, why suddenly come to our company? What was it that, inspired you to be part of the show?
Well, I will say, first of all, integrity. I think that's really important. I think there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of things out there that are not necessarily true blue. And I think that's really important. I feel what I do is help people heal. I think that's the biggest part of the human existence.
Hmm.
And I feel like Ask the Answer offers that. They have the integrity. They stand up. They do care about what's going on. They want to be able to bring people the truth and information that helps them get to the next part of their life. And it's really nice to be part of a community that you feel you are in alignment with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what was your journey up to this point? What have you been doing prior to joining Ask the Answer?
Oh, that was a rough one. It was bumpy. Can't say it was smooth sailing. So I started out. I was given up for adoption, and I came. I realized that I came from a lot of different religions, and so I had a strong quest for healing, quite frankly.
Hmm.
And I always knew that I was connected to the other side, but I didn't know what it was called, right? So I am a psychic medium, and so all mediums are psychics. Not all psychics are mediums,
Yeah.
but so I was really I feel put here to really help people heal. And what happens is you kind of come in, you make an agreement to come into this side of the world, this side of the veil, and okay, here are the things I'm going to work on. And I looking back, I think it's all beautiful, right? It's like a beautiful design. It's like when you finally get that last puzzle piece of a 1,500 piece puzzle and you put it together, you're like, yeah, I did it. It's kind of like that. So it was bumpy. I feel like I went through a lot of trial and errors. I went through a lot of tests. A lot of things fell apart in my life. And the biggest quest I always had was healing.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's the thing that I was supposed to pay attention to. So I as a little kid, I remember having seizures, for example. So
Hmm.
I must have been like 4 or 5 when I recognized I had seizures, and I would hear this beautiful, warm voice tell me, "Just Ikrit, just relax. Remember to breathe. Remember you need to lie on the floor. Remember to watch out for your tongue." And I would get these amazing instructions from like the perfect parent.
Hmm.
Now, I didn't know that that was a spirit guide. I had no idea that other people didn't hear these things. I thought it was, natural. And it was natural, of course. And so I actually hid the fact that I was having seizures from my adopted parents because I didn't really trust the bond there.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting was I was always getting like, I would get tingles on the back of my tongue. So I would know when it was coming. And I would also know that my spirit guide was coming. So it was kind of like it didn't panic me. I just kind of paid attention to what was going on around me. And I remember one year, I must have been like 6 or 7. I was feeling it coming on in the car, and I was like, oh snap, I'm not going to be able to hide this.
Yeah.
So I tried really hard. I was like talking to my guide, please make it go away. Not now. I'm in the car. They're going to know. And so what happened was I went into the seizure. I could feel, and I was totally protected. And I tried to put my head down as if I was sleeping. I tried to really play it off. And I remember hearing my brother next to me saying, oh my gosh, what's wrong with her?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was highlighted, unfortunately. And in my brain, I was trying to say, it's okay, it's going to go away in a minute,
Mm-hmm.
but I just couldn't. So what was interesting was, and then they put me in the hospital. They attached all kinds of things to my brain, and it was like a hot mess that I was trying to avoid. But what was really interesting was I was living on both sides of the veil in some way.
Yeah.
And I just found it fascinating. Like, wow, I didn't know that other people didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, another time when I was, I don't know, I must have been about 8 or 9. I remember going inside, and my adopted mother was playing cards with her friends. And I remember I was in bed, and I kept feeling something touch my arm, and it was really making me nervous because physically I could feel it. And I kept going in and saying, they're touching me. And I would get the, oh, it's okay, dear, there's nothing, like there's nothing under the bed and all that silliness. But they didn't even check. They just whisked me off back to bed. And I realized I'm going to have to handle this myself.
Yeah.
And I kept getting from that. I must have gone out to them to ask for help 3 or 4 times. Then I realized they're not going to help me. But they kept telling me, oh, it's your hair. It's just tickling your arm.
Yeah.
And so here I am in bed, and now I have my all my hair swept to one side so that it can't touch anything. And I'm still feeling like what feels like fingertips on my arms. And finally I just decided, okay, I'm going to talk to this energy. What do you want? Who are you? I'm scared.
Yeah.
And I would hear a different voice, not the same voice as the spirit guide that was taking care of me, but this was a new one, and it was like in tandem with a couple of different energies, and they were saying, we're here for you. And I didn't know what it was, but I was having this conversation, and I was like, wow, it's safer here than it is in the living room over there where they're playing cards. So
Yeah.
it was kind of a very interesting experience. I don't know that I would have written that in my future
No.
had
And
I, been
how
able
brave as
to.
well at such a young age, hiding seizures from your adoptive parents and having to deal and cope with that by yourself. I mean, would you say you had to grow up quite quickly as a child? To
Oh,
be
for
able to
sure.
do that and not be scared, and to have to notify somebody for you to think I'm going to deal with this myself.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question because I always, growing up, thought I brought myself up, and I would always hear from my guides, "No, we brought you up," and it's
Mm-hmm.
so interesting
Uh,
because, yeah, it is a weird place to be, right? You can't
mhm,
trust the grown-ups, but at the same time, if I look back, they didn't put me in danger zones, right? So the people around me like fed me, kept me safe enough in order for me to be able to be in this school of connection.
mhm, mhm.
And it really is quite fascinating, and it does make you grow up for sure quickly. I do remember like sitting on the Rocky Mountains. I was sitting on some rocks, and I was probably about 6, and thinking, this is going to be a tough go. And somehow it was like I was like, an old man. Somehow I knew that this thing called life is not what it appears to be. There's a
Mhm.
lot of navigation around it. So yeah, very interesting.
And nice that you were open. You were able to open up to that by yourself and have that maturity to do it, rather than closing it off and thinking you were going crazy, or thinking maybe because of what you've been through, your imagination or anything like that, that you almost like release yourself and embrace what you were experiencing.
Fair, absolutely. And I think that's part of the older soul. Like,
Mhm.
we get to remember certain things when we come across this side of the veil. So it's like there's some kind of familiarity. Like, okay, I don't know exactly what the information is, but I know to trust it. So
Yeah.
there is, like, I think each lifetime we go through, we're able to kind of reconnect quicker. So it's almost like a plug-in. It's like,
Mm.
okay, I've been here several times. I know what this is like. This is weird being in a 6-year-old body, but I'm going to be able to navigate it. But yeah, it is. It's all fascinating, and I would encourage everybody to read and learn and discover yourselves, because we're all here for a reason, and everybody is important.
Absolutely. And you mentioned about being passionate about healing people. So, how long was your healing period over the years to get to the point now that you can now heal others? Because, as they often say, how can you heal somebody if you're not healed yourself? So, how long was your process getting through that time?
So first, I have to say, I would say I'm still healing. But
Mm-hmm.
it took quite a bit of time. I would say it was a good, like quest of 10 years of like, what's wrong with me? How am I connected? How am I not connected? Why can't I make certain things work? So there was a lot of that. But then what I realized was, as we learn and develop ourselves, we're still able to share information. It doesn't mean we have to be perfect, right? We
Yeah.
don't have to be like seal the deal. Sign, deliver. It's not that.
Mm.
So I once I started feeling the confidence of like, yeah, okay, the communication is always open. I was able to really feel like, okay, I get it. Now I understand it. And I wish I had understood, yeah, when I was younger. I was in my teens when I was in Woodstock, New York, which is kind of like the hippie place of, where there's a lot of metaphysical stuff going on there. And I had a reading by this woman, and she said, you belong in the metaphysical field. And I wish I had even known what that word was. I
Mm.
didn't know. I had no idea. I was like, and I remember my boyfriend listening in on the reading, and he was like, wow, that was fascinating. I was like, really? Because I didn't understand. It didn't resonate because it was too human for me, which is kind of a funny place. But I did realize that people would ask me what I thought. People would ask me my idea of where things are going. And when I started realizing that people felt calmer talking to me, I thought, okay, it doesn't matter. I don't have to be perfect.
Mhm.
It's really time to help people because, like look at therapists, quite frankly. Many of them have lots of problems, right?
Yeah.
But they're great at helping people fix themselves.
Yeah.
So we don't always have to live from just one direction. And so probably, I mean, I've been doing this for about, well, I like to say 18 plus years because I don't like
Mhm.
to age myself. But
Mhm.
I feel like it's an inspiration. So I fix someone in insight, and then I'm able to kind of like get another piece of the puzzle for myself. So it's kind of like an exchange of energy. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, because you're always growing, we're always moving, there's always changes in our lives. So, yes, there's always going to be things that are going to be challenging, things we're overcoming, things that we're going to learn from. So, as you mentioned, you can't always be perfect all the time because every day there's something going on where you're going to have to start from the beginning and learn something new.
For sure, for sure. And look, that's the whole concept of life is it's
Yeah.
all about learning. It's all about, elevating yourself, getting to a higher level, having, more, belief system of where you're going and what you're doing. Manifesting is I know a subject that everybody loves to talk about, but it really is about removing the blocks, right? So, I always like to tell people that blocks are kind of like sitting in traffic, right? If you're sitting in traffic in your car, and there are 4 or 6 cars in front of you, you can't get where you're going as fast as you want to. You need to get that out of the way, and it's no different healing, right? So you want to live your best life, but you do have to tap into what's in your way and
Mhm.
get it out of the way. And
Yeah.
it seems like a simple concept. Unfortunately, it seems a little bit more complicated when you're living it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's nice to speak to a psychic like yourself because it does bring awareness and a different perspective on things and sometimes highlight the things that maybe we are brushing under the carpet or the core issue of why we're not moving forward. We might think it's one thing, but actually, when you look and delve deeper, it might actually have stemmed from something completely different, or the root cause might be something that maybe they've, again, just put to one side and put it to bed and maybe something they need to be made aware of.
100%, 100%. As a matter of fact, what I like to tell people is, the heart and the head, they work in tandem together. However, the head is really sort of like the software system that sort of downloaded the stuff that people, either knew for sure or weren't sure about. It's kind of like, it's a little bit chaotic. It's kind of like the spaghetti in your head. It's like you
Mhm.
have to kind of weed through it. Whereas the heart knows. The heart knows what is correct. And what's really interesting is when people are talking, I have a tendency to talk with my hands, but when people say I know, they have a tendency to put their hand on their heart.
Mhm.
So they're already in tune, right? They haven't lost the total antenna that they came in with. So when you say I know and you're putting your hand on your heart, you're like, okay, I feel it, I know it, it is. And then when you think I think, it's a little bit more precarious, right? It could be, is that
Yeah.
your thought? Is that somebody else's thought? And we really need to heal by getting to know ourselves. And I know people love to talk about, meditation, but it's hard for people. It's
Yeah.
it's not, and that's why it's really important when you reach out to a psychic, we can help you. Just
Mhm.
tap into where you need to be at that time. Let's get to the spot where you need to be now
Mhm.
and make tomorrow a lot easier and lighter and better and more beautiful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with what you said there, because sometimes if somebody was in a situation where, they were in a nice environment, it was nice and peaceful, they didn't have any distractions, they could probably tap into that and maybe be able to draw on what they need to be aware of at that time. But for your everyday person that's maybe working 9 to 5, they've got children, they don't have that peace and that silence to be able to tap into it. They're always on the go, but yet they still need to get things sorted in life. Again, speaking to a psychic can tap in and connect them to that in that time, and release whatever maybe they need to know.
Exactly. And so I just read earlier this morning, I read a quote which I thought was phenomenal. Mentorship is a shortcut
Mm-hmm.
and pride is a detour, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of
Yeah.
interesting, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we all do it. We're all guilty of it at
Yeah.
some point.
Yeah.
But we do want to hone into, like, let's get out of this spot now so that we can, enjoy the next day, 2 days, and grow from there. So it is an important thought to
Yeah.
pay attention to.
And being honest and being open with yourself, because they're so worried about what other people think or hurting other people's feelings, but sometimes you end up hurting them even more because you're not being upfront and honest with what you're thinking or what you're feeling. I mean, just a quick example, my husband, and this was just something very minor, but there was somebody asking if my son could be part of something, and I knew straight away he wouldn't be able to because he has something else going on. My husband would go, oh yeah, I'm sure that should be okay, let me look into that. And when he got off the phone, I was like, you already know he can't do it. So why are you wasting that person's time by saying it might be a possibility that he might be able to do it? Because now that person's going to go off and organize things because you've now given the inkling that maybe he might be available. And it might be something small and minor, but it's like, cut that out. Straight to the point, tell it how it is. Don't waste people's time, because people have got busy lives. And I think the more honest, and I teach out my children to be as honest as you can, because if you're not honest, it'll just come around and bite you in the bum. And then you'll be in a worse situation than
Oh,
you
for
were in the first
sure.
place.
But so what's interesting is with your husband, that's a program. That's a
Mhm.
mind thing. It's a
You don't want to
program.
disappoint somebody.
Exactly. So he somewhere down as a child, he was downloaded that, don't say no, people get upset. And
Yeah.
and so he's avoiding pain for that person and for himself. And it's so interesting how it is a program. And it's not easy if and thank God you're bringing up your kids that way. That's amazing because it's going to be easier for them to be right in alignment with themselves, but also to be around other people are going to be drawn to that because they don't have those blocks where oh, I have to worry about their feelings.
Yeah.
Feelings are important, but we all have them, and emotions can go kind of askew, right? They're not necessarily all healthy and correct. So
Mm.
you could say, oh, Egret, you look beautiful today, and I might take it like, well, what do you mean? Did I not look great yesterday?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's all a filter. So
Exactly.
telling your children to be honest it just makes things a lot easier and clearer. And
In a
unfortunately,
polite,
some,
respectful way, not in a rude way or
yeah,
abrupt way. It's the way you say it.
for sure, and people need to hear that. People need to hear the truth. We need more truth in this world. Look at, we're crashing right
Hmm.
now. We're really crashing as as a planet, as as humans. So we need more of the truth, and people want to hear the truth. We don't want sugar coated stuff, because it only makes you good for a half a day, right?
Mhm.
And then you have to like deal with reality. So and that's what I love about what I do, is that I love that I could tell people in a gentle way, you
Yeah.
know what, you're going off your path. Let's get back, and let's look at why you went off your path, so that it doesn't happen again. But let's also make sure that you're well on your way of where you want to be. And it's important, and it's not always easy to tell people things that they don't want to hear. But as well, first of all, working with spirit guides, they're great, because they will actually literally give me like words right in front of my third eye. So if I they'll push me to say certain things in a certain way. But people need to hear the truth. They need,
Mm.
why else are we looking for a guidance? Because our parents didn't do it right.
Oh.
Not their fault, not their
No,
fault,
just the
right?
way, yeah,
I'm a
just the
parent
way the world
myself,
is.
but
Yeah. You mentioned there something that was quite interesting, and obviously talking about being honest and straight to the point. I mean, how do you think the world is now compared to how it used to be? You mentioned that the world, crashing around us in certain areas. What is it about now, especially, that people are finding so hard in the world?
well, I think in the past, there's always been things that are, shady, not good, not great. But I think also, um, the nuclear, just the families were able to establish what, they had sort of boundaries of what the
Mhm.
outside world would connect with them, and where they would allow it into their lives. Now I feel like with, certainly social media, and everybody's walking around with a cell phone. Gosh forbid you don't know where your cell phone is. Like, that doesn't even
Yeah.
happen, right? And I feel like we're just constantly bombarded. Now, when I do readings, I deliberately use my heart chakra to heal, regardless of what we're talking about, because there's always going to be blocks that people don't even necessarily know or are aware of. And it's no different with social media, but I feel like it's on the opposite end. I feel like we're being bombarded by, EMFs or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But there are programs that are constantly, we're allowing ourselves to be subjected to. And
Yeah.
that is killing us, quite
Yeah.
frankly, right? If you think about it, it's hitting
I,
us too much.
Yeah, I had the same conversation with my brother the other day, because I was saying, oh, that one of our friends was saying that they went to a certain part of the world and they got in a taxi and there was no driver. It was
Oh,
just, it was just an electric automated robot car that was driving them somewhere. I was like, oh my God, there's redundancies in the world. You don't have someone at the checkout anymore. You have to do it yourself. There's going to be less jobs, and everything is technology. And yes, I know we're growing and developing, but is not encouraging for people, the younger generation, one, to socialize correctly, the ones to have the right jobs and enough jobs. I find that quite scary and unsettling, and I'm sure there's other people that feel that as well.
yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like we've sort of like, like deleted a part of human needs, just but and there's one thing talking about like loss of jobs and income and all that stuff. But if we have all of this, then we should be using the time to develop ourselves, and we're not,
No.
right? So we should be really connecting to spirit. Everybody comes in with an antenna. I always like to tell people, what do you think CEOs do? They go with their gut, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way they work. And and doctors and lawyers, they read energy. What I mean, it's an antenna. We all come in with it. We don't want to lose it. So if we have all these great things that are saving us time, right? Like, we don't have to drive ourselves, so I can actually have a conversation with someone, or write a report or something while I'm going somewhere. Then why aren't we using it to better humanity? And that's where we really need to pay attention to. And
Yeah.
that's why I love when people call me, and we talk about what they need. It's like, yeah, this is what you need. Remember, you are human. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, don't shut that off, and just, yeah, absolutely. And even more so too with the younger generation, to keep them developing in that way, and not, oh, I'll get the answer on AI, or I'll get the answer on this, like, because they're just not opening up and using their brains. They're becoming quite monged out, and yeah, not socializing, and getting the answers quickly. And yes, it's great, like you said, and the fact that you can get answers so quickly and not having to put the work in. But as a person, you're not growing and developing and,
Right.
using those skills.
Right, right. And if you think about it, I remember like 10 years ago they were talking about, oh, we're not gonna have any more surgeons because kids are not playing with Legos and clay and they're not using their the fine motor skills. I mean, now we've like superseded all of that, like to all kinds of things. Like like you said, you had mentioned they're not social. They really don't know how to communicate. Text is great, but you can't hear somebody's tone of voice, right?
No.
So the person on the receiving end of a text is going to filter it through their own knowledge, right? So if I'm paranoid and someone texts me, I'm going to filter it through a paranoid
Yeah,
version
yeah,
of what. So it's really it's sad, but at the same time, again, like I feel like what I do really helps humanity, and we just need to do more of it. We need to
yeah,
connect with each other. People
yeah.
do need to know that they're not alone. Everybody has spirit guides and spirited loved ones, and messages are around us all the time. I
Hmm.
mean, I really feel like more than anything, I'm a translator just to make sure they understand that they have access to this information so they can have a great day, so they can
Yeah.
have a great life.
Yeah, absolutely. You obviously are a medium. So, what are the benefits from working with the mediumship side? You're mentioning healing. Is it beneficial for people to have that when they have lost people in their lives, connecting with the loved ones or people that are around them? What would you say are the benefits?
I would say it's very healing. A lot of times people didn't get to say goodbye or they didn't know that, several conversations a week I'll hear, I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't make it to the hospital. I didn't, and
Mm.
so, and right now I'm tearing up, which is my symbol of like, there's a lot of healing and they appreciate that I'm giving this message. It being able to say goodbye is so important for us here on this side of the veil. The other side of the veil, they see us. They're around us. They come to visit. How do you think I can read into that information? If it weren't there, I couldn't. It
Mhm.
would be impossible, right? But they allow us to heal by saying, hey, you know what? So and so, I did see that you came to my funeral. I did see, that you were driving to the hospital and I crossed over before you got there. So these things are really important because that can create an energy block, right? Like, oh, I didn't get to say goodbye to my grandmother. Oh my gosh, I was driving from Arkansas to Texas and I don't know what happened, but I couldn't get there. So it's really about healing, and it's also about reminding us we're not alone, and death is not the end, right?
Mhm.
It's not. It's a transition.
Yeah.
We've been here several times. It's not an end, and I feel like a lot of people need to know that it's okay. We don't
Yeah.
want to end our lives here early, right? Because there are things we have to do. We took on stuff, but it's really important to know that it's not like the end is over and then it's just complete detached, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of healing in that, and there's a lot of energy about continuing on and recognizing that your purpose is really important, and people are going to come and go in the physical plane, but they will always be around for
Mhm.
you in the end. And it's really all about healing and progressing into the next stage of everybody's life where they're going.
Mm. And everybody deals with grief very different. Some people can very much go off the rails. Some people can go very much within themselves. Some people see it as, right, I'm going to live my life for them now, and go on this big, like, you know, motivation, or go on this big like goal to spread the word of maybe something they pass away from, whether that be cancer or a heart attack, and raise money. And people deal with it very differently.
For sure. And I always like to tell people grief is not one emotion. It's several, and there are layers to grief, right?
Mm.
I could be angry that you left me. I could be sad that I didn't say goodbye. I mean, there are so many different layers to it
Yeah.
that it's really important for us to heal because we don't want to keep that energy stuck. That's really the main theme, is like to not keep that energy stuck, because we do need to carry on. And like you mentioned, some people do take their grief and they change it into something else, like advocate for finding the cure for cancer or advocate for this and that.
Mhm.
And that, if you look back, that person that you lost was really in alignment with pushing you and catapulting you to your purpose.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's also an interesting thought, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I didn't want to lose my, my sister to breast cancer, but oh my gosh, she did make me very aware. And now now I learned to use my voice. Now I'm like starting to, create a platform where people really recognize that it's curable if it's caught early. And so
Yeah.
it's all interesting, and everything is connected. It's really fascinating.
Absolutely. So, as well as doing the mediumship side and the healing aspect, do you find that you get quite a lot of similar calls? You know, sometimes people get drawn to people going to them for certain areas of their life. Is it quite varied, or do you find that you are speaking to the sort of same age, the same gender, the same sort of area in life? Do you get like phases of that in your readings?
So that's an interesting question. I would say I do get a variety, but I would say mostly I get the middle age to even older that are really connected to, their lives and how they're going, but they really are trying to figure out their relationships and where, it's almost like I've done so much in my life, but I don't really have like a blueprint now.
Yeah.
And
What's your
that
purpose?
comes up a lot. And, look, it's also reasonable, right? It's like, we keep going, we keep going. We have all this information that we have access to as we go along. And then we get to a point where it's like, oh, I don't have a map. Where do we go? So I do hear that a lot. And I do hear, particularly with relationships, I think that, particularly in this day and age, people don't communicate as much, and I
Yeah.
think that's why it comes up that we're always texting, like, okay, I'll see you, meet you for dinner. Okay, that's great, but and then you have dinner and you don't really discuss all the things because you're
Mm,
like sort of out of whack of having conversations. So
yeah.
I would say mostly it has a lot to do with relationships and really wanting to know where to go from here.
Mm. And it is more complicated because you're not just looking at yourself, are you? You're looking at somebody else and their journey. Are you in line with one another? Is that year a specific year for that person that doesn't maybe align with what you want to do that year? There can be a clash. You know, often we'll say in our relationships, God, they're really moody at the moment. I haven't got a clue what's going on or whatever. And then other times, like, oh, they've come out of that now and they're really happy and, it's great. And I think, it can go up and down with emotions, what people are going through. Yes, of course, your work and other areas of your life can impact you, but also the energies out there can also impact you and influence you. So that you might find that you're not quite gelling and matching at the moment.
For sure. And it's okay to step back for a quick minute, right? Like you don't
Mhm.
have to always be perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yesterday we had a really sweet couple and they were probably, I think they were in their 80s, and they were holding hands. And I thought, and I went up to them and I said, look, you don't know me, but I just think it's so sweet that you're holding hands. And the woman said to me, that's how we stay connected.
Yeah. Oh,
Isn't that cute? Because
yeah, that is
we
nice.
don't need to talk, and we didn't really have a long conversation. They were on their way somewhere, but you think about it, you know, couples that have been married for 30, 40 years, it's not that every day was there, like a party. There were times, I'm sure, that they, didn't want to talk to their partner, or they were upset, or they just were confused and needed their own space. But they were able to navigate it through, just that regular respect. This is
And
my person.
mindfulness.
And yeah, and get on with it. So it is interesting, and I do think that that's an important reminder for people that it's okay. We're human. Like,
Mhm.
not every day is a party. It's
No.
it's it's all right, and it's like I talk to a lot of people that are depressed, but they're not depressed where it's something that's been going on for 20 years. It's a depression, like I feel like I'm in a rut, like and that's okay. You're
Mhm.
recognizing it, you're paying attention to it, and
Yeah.
let's talk about it, and let's unpack what's going on while I run some energy, and
Mhm.
let's remove some blocks. And people, I love when someone hangs up the phone and I can feel their energy had already shifted.
Yeah, that's
That's
nice.
important.
Because having a psychic reading, you don't have to have a reading because things aren't going right in your life, because you could have a great job, you have a great relationship, you've got lovely children, but maybe there is something that you feel that you want to have a reading about, whether it's just to see if you're on track, or maybe you do feel that you've got everything in the world, but maybe you just still don't feel happy or content or fulfilled for one reason or another, and you can't put your finger on it. So it doesn't always have to be because something negative's happening in your life why you would have a reading.
For sure, for sure. I mean, look, I've helped women that wanted to get pregnant. That was just their thing. It was like,
Mhm.
okay, I've found the perfect mate, and now I want to have a child, and that's beautiful when they call and they're like, "Yay, I'm pregnant!"
Yeah.
I know it's lovely, right? It's a wonderful thing. And then there are plenty of people that are they're highly intelligent, they're very focused, they have everything going on, they've got great cars, great offices, a great relationship, but they just want to know, well, what are my guides, seeing for the next step?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
love those calls, right? Because it's so nice to like feel their heart energy, that chakra is just wide open to give me. I want to learn, I want to know, I'm open. Yeah, I mean, it could be anything. It really could be anything. And life should be exciting. So, you know, call people, call a psychic to find out why it should be exciting. It's a beautiful thing. It's wonderful. It really is.
You mentioned there about connecting to anything. What about things like animals and pets? Do you get people calling through for that sort of area of their lives? If it's not just about their own life, but maybe about their animals that they really see as their family. They get really close, they connect with them. Their animals go through hard times and good times with them, and they want to maybe know about them passing, or are they happy, or anything like that, animal wise. Do you get any of that?
Oh, for sure. So fur babies, that's what we call them. But yeah, and what's really astounding is years back, I was on the phone with a client, and all of a sudden I interrupted. I said, I don't know what's wrong with your cat, but my teeth are bothering me. Well, who would have thought, right? She takes the cat to the vet. He's got issues with his gums.
Mhm.
And I find it fascinating because animals are really here to heal us, right? So when there's something wrong, it's because they're pulling energy away from us so that we can be healthier. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it's an amazing thing. So there are spirited, loved animals that have passed, and then there are also totems and like spirit guides that are animals, and they're trying to infuse that energy, and it's an amazing thing. Like all these living creatures are here to help us, and you
Mhm.
wouldn't think so, right? Like a few when I first moved to Florida, the bugs are scary here, and so we catch and we release. We don't kill in our
Yeah.
home. And there was a very scary spider. I'm not going to lie, I was jumping up and down, but we got a glass over it eventually, and little, cardboard underneath, and got it outside. And you think about it, that little spider, which looked poisonous, it wasn't in the end, but that little guy was here to give us a message,
Mhm.
to let us know that there's more coming, and there's abundance. And so it is fascinating, and I do love tapping into people's pets because they have so much energy and information for their families that they want to kind of heal them even when they're on the other side. So it is a beautiful thing. It's an amazing connection.
Especially when they can't talk and they are communicating through energy. Even when they're in the living, it's all through their emotional, their characteristics or something. They're not talking to you, but somehow sometimes if
Yeah.
they're feeling good or happy or sad or they're not quite themselves. You feel that.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is they'll use, like the five senses. They'll put something in my body, just like, like I had mentioned, the teeth for the cat.
Yeah.
So they'll use that. They use pictures a lot
Hmm.
because they have a frame of reference, so they can kind of give me like a viewpoint, and I can explain the picture to the client so that they can kind of place it.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's really fascinating. Like if someone's not getting enough water, I'll literally feel like, wow, my mouth is so dry, and like I'm so thirsty. So yeah, they're able to communicate just fine, and they don't need English or Spanish or words.
Yeah.
They are able. They're very capable. They just need us to listen.
Do you ever feel like pain, whether it's animals or humans, like if muscular pain, or oh yeah, I've got a sore hip, or I've got a sore shoulder, I've got a bit of a headache for migraines. Do you pick up those sort of sensations?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, and they can feel quite real, it's almost like convincing, like it's mine. But I know that when I'm in session, I know that it doesn't belong to me because it just popped through.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are times, and also being an empath, I would absorb energy. So there are times where, when I was back in New York, because it's all apartment living, so there's a lot of energy around you. Your home is not as protected as when you're in you're a home, a house.
Mm.
And I would be doing dishes, and I would just bring in some like migraine energy. And I did never had a tendency to get migraines, but apparently my upstairs neighbor did, and I would
Ah.
pull that energy in.
Oh,
And so yeah, you do feel things in your body for sure.
yeah, wow. I mean, there's so much that a psychic reading can offer people. Is there anything that we haven't mentioned today that you're really passionate about that you want people to know before we finish today?
I mean, I guess the biggest thing that I always like people to know is they're not alone. They are
Mm.
not alone. Everybody has a spirit guide, if not one, many. Everybody has spirited loved ones, even people that they didn't necessarily know in this time, right? It could be a great great grandfather. And there are messages and information all around them that they should have access to. So, let us just translate for you and get that information so that you can know that you're not alone. It feels so much different when you know that you're being supported and
Yeah.
protected and nurtured, and life is easier. It's easier to be courageous and move forward. So I think that's the biggest message, and that's my favorite thing of what I do is helping people see that.
Brilliant. Well, do you know what? It's been so lovely catching up with you today, and time has gone so quickly already. I can't believe it. We'll have to have another catch up with you at some point, have a little update, and see how things have been going, and the next part of your journey as a psychic. If people want to come through and have psychic readings with you, generally I know there's a bit of a time difference, but are you on in the mornings or in the evenings in the UK?
So I am on in the mornings, which I guess it's kind of late night, right? Are we 5 hours different?
Yeah. So
But
we're
I'm
well,
trying
yeah,
to expand.
yeah. Brilliant. And your pin number is 700692 if you want to come through and have a reading
Yes.
with you.
Yes, and
Brilliant.
it's Egret, so you'll see my name as well. And you can also request, right? So if I get something in an email and like someone's requesting, I'll get online if I can, if I have access. So, look, we're all here to help each other and support each other. So just reach out and I'll do what I can to be there for you.
Oh, I'm sure lots of them are going to come through and have a reading with you. Thank you so much indeed for coming and being involved with our podcast today. It's been lovely catching up with you and learning all about you and how you are and what you do as a psychic. So thank you so much for your time, and we wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you, all of us. Yeah, onward and
Take,
upward.
take care. Lots of love.
Bye bye.
Bye.